if people are making decisions in a way unconsciously before they make conscious decisions, that just seems to me that it doesn't imply that free will doesn't exist, but that maybe what is free will exists in the unconscious space.
Right. So we talked a little bit about what makes freedom and what makes a decision. And usually we have this notion that it's all happening in our conscious mind. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that's just, like I was saying before, is a limitation of how we think in right. general. Mm-hmm. And we also can only really account for so much of actual causality when it comes to our decisions and our actions and those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So I think it's entirely possible that like I was saying before, there's certain autonomous things that are happening in your body, like mm-hmm. for example, your heart's beating, your breathing, those types of things, and you can have some influence on them consciously as well. But like let's just go even more basic, like the cellular functions that are happening that you're not ever like thinking about, but that your brain is still involved in coordinating and making them happen. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's most of what's actually driving your life then in like that view is happening unconsciously. And some of those processes that are happening unconsciously are then elevated to the level of being conscious awareness, mm-hmm. but that necessarily because of how that process works, that's sort of happening after the actual decision is made in a sense, right?
Right, well, because the center of the brain where you have the pineal gland, and that's not the only part of the brain that's responsible for making these decisions, like the beating heart and the breathing, but I think all of the decisions kind of start from that point in the middle and kind of emanate outward.
Yeah,
it's not like it's not like the functions in the outer regions of my brain, like the neocortex, are affecting how my heart rate is functioning. Although Wim Hof, who's a meditation expert, he consciously decides to go into cold water, frigid water, because he knows how it affects his biology mm-hmm. at a cellular level.
Right.
He does do this breathing exercise in tandem with that because he knows how the breathing energizes the body and it actually creates a sort of improves the immune system. He was injected with a virus, E. coli bacteria, that was considered dangerous and potentially lethal, and he didn't show any symptoms. He did it as an experiment to show the validity of his breathing exercise, even without cold treatment. So I do think there's a certain level, is once you become aware of that your unconscious mind is where your decision-making patterns go, you can actually choose to try and interact with that in a way that improves your life. And this is where my shoehorn of dreams comes into play.
Go ahead.
Because I think dreams is a very important psychoanalytic aspect of our, well, it's an aspect of our minds that has been studied by many psychoanalysts, and I think it's valid to this discussion because do we choose to dream? And I think there's a gray area with that because you can lucid dream too.
Right.
In addition to just having a dream that you remember, you can actually lucid dream. You can be aware that you're in a dream space. That is where you can fly.
And I think a lot of psychologists have also talked about the dream space being another area where either unconscious or subconscious thoughts are sort of rising to the level of consciousness, right?
Right, but that makes sense, and I think that's why people like Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud spent so much time on dream analysis, because they realized that it is coming from the structures deeper in the mind that we aren't conscious of. But it's actually where maybe our consciousness is like starting from. Mm-hmm. It's like you're seeing the edges of the tree, but you're not seeing the roots, or you're seeing the tree, but you're not seeing the roots.
Right.
So it's like, is the tree...
And it's also like, I think a lot of our decision-making processes are built into that because those systems are older, they can react faster, they can handle like responding to threats and things like that. So I think necessarily that's where a lot of our decision-making actually happens.
The reptilian cortex, which is, they call it that because that's a part of the brain that we share in commonality with reptilian like creatures.
The lizard brain, I sometimes
they call it the lizard brain. My friends and I kind of call it the monkey brain, where it's like all the impulsive desires to...
Does that make all of us lizard people?
No, I think it kind of does. We can actually that's a really interesting thought experiment. I don't particularly subscribe to the literal theory of lizard people, but metaphorically I think it's helpful to think of all human beings as being like lizard people.